Welcome back to Block TV. It is time for Blockchain and Booze, that time in the week where we gather all the wheelers and dealers of the sphere, plow them with alcohol, and have them answer questions as they try to stay sober. So this week's panel, from left to right, none other than my favorite individual to abuse, Usher Westrup Evans, Block TV's senior correspondent. Thank you for being here. We can't do this without Auriello Chayon. Too bad he comes back not so often. Thank you for being back. CEO at Zango. Hello to you. Yes, thank God, another woman. Jaguar Advagal Jag, head of Jag Lawyers. And, of course, Alex Davis, not to be confused with Alexis. He's the advisor at Blockchain Israel. Hello to you guys. Lovely to have you folks. And it is the end of the week. And even though we thought in the middle of the week that the whole coronavirus was possibly kind of getting to a certain level, no. Because the end of the week showed us some new reports, some 242 deaths from the new coronavirus were recorded in the Chinese province of Hubei. I think I'm mispronouncing this, right, Asher?
Hubei,
there we go. And the deadliest day of the outbreak thus far, reminding everybody this broke out in mid-January. There was also a huge increase in the number of cases, with nearly 15,000 people diagnosed, according to new reports. And although Hubei has started using a broader definition, change in methodology to diagnose people, which accounts for most of the rise in cases, markets have already started to react. At the time of this taping, Asian markets have already reacted to the fresh news with some dips. U.S. markets opening. Some predict, as they were not affected thus far, that the same will happen there. Do we think that this has, first of all, we've seen an amazing ride for both Bitcoin and altcoins over the course of somewhat similar to the breakout of the epidemic, one can argue. Do we think this will have an effect on our sphere?
I think any major change, for good or for bad, has an effect. This one will as well. Should it have an effect? No, I think not. I think it's an epidemic. It's a biology. It's a disease, but still, it shouldn't affect
But I don't know, Jag. I'm going to disagree with you slightly on that one, because I think that the fact that we're seeing in China, although it's now well past the Lunar New Year holiday, it's well past the period when China should be back up and running at full steam, and yet we're seeing massive sectors of the Chinese economy still not running, still not functioning. Factories still closed down. In some cities, as low as 10% of the workforce having actually returned to work, while the rest live in fear. That sort of impact on an economy that represents 16% of global GDP and is obviously the center to the world's supply chain. I think that must affect markets in all manner of ways. How it will affect crypto markets, I'm not an expert on and I'm not 100% sure on, but I think it should have an effect.
I fully agree it should affect China as well and the national markets.
I think you look at the price of Bitcoin jumping back above 10,000 and then kind of playing with that line for a bit. Bitcoin tends to be a bit of a safe haven when the world turns into a little bit of chaos.
One could argue that it's also one of the arguments against it. Warren Buffett in a recent dinner with some members of the sphere, let me just put it that way, argued that it's the currency of fear, and that'll be its downfall. Do we think that's the case?
I don't. Currency of fear, and that'll be its downfall. I think it's going to be a currency of that's like saying gold will go down because people buy it when they're scared. It doesn't affect. I don't buy it.
You don't buy it.
I don't buy it at all.
One can argue that I tend to agree. Maybe that's the past thinking, but at the end of the day, if we're looking for this mass, Armageddon, and somewhat this narrative, complies with that, to have Bitcoin rise in number, doesn't that make it, the currency of fear in some ways?
But then it's an interesting point at the moment, because what we've seen in the sphere at the moment is this massive, the massive alt season that we're seeing at the moment, right? We're seeing the alts leading the charge, which by all accounts, if the narrative of Bitcoin as the risk-off asset in the crypto market and the other alts, particularly the ones that are rising so exponentially, are definitely risk-on assets, that sort of flies in the face of the narrative of safe haven if we are indeed in a time of crisis.
But the way Bitcoin works and the way alts work are completely separate beasts. Alts, kind of work in relation to Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes up because of a sense of fear in the market, the alts will go up because they see Bitcoin going up and they move with it. It's this kind of like double-tiered system where the alt doesn't trade against the dollar, the alt trades against Bitcoin. So if it just maintains its value, it will naturally go up. And then as Bitcoin goes up, the alts kind of lose their value, and then people buy into them and they move up with it. So it kind of doubles up.
But also leading the charge in this, which implies that there's a speculative money coming in. It's not that there's been necessarily significant differences and changes.
The whole market is speculative.
All right, perhaps.
No, it's a good point in that respect. Apropos, but moving ahead away from speculation to something that, maybe we can still speculate on the head of the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, found himself earlier this week under questioning by the United States Congressman Bill Foster. Foster wanted to know what the United States Central Bank is doing regarding a digital currency. Powell's response was quite intriguing. Let's have a listen.
Every major central bank is currently taking a deep look at that we feel like that's our obligation. Technology has now made this possible. Private sector's innovating, they're doing it, so I think it's very much incumbent on us and other central banks to understand the costs and benefits and trade-offs associated with a possible digital currency. Frankly, Libra really lit a fire under that, and it was a bit of a wake-up call that this is coming fast and could come in a way that is that is quite widespread and systemically important fairly quickly if you use one of these big tech networks like Libra did. So we're working hard on it. We fully appreciate the importance of making quick progress. We have not decided to do this, though. It is not. I think that there are many questions that need to be answered around a digital currency for the United States, including issues of cyber issues, privacy issues, many operational alternatives present themselves. And so we're going to be working through all that and doing that work thoroughly and responsibly.
Now, that was Jerome Powell. We're going to be responsible, we're considering this, et cetera, et cetera. 24 hours later, okay, here's the Secretary of Treasury of the United States saying this.
There's a lot of different things that get grouped together into this one area, so let me just be brief. But on pure cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, and there are others, we want to make sure that these are not used as the equivalent of secret bank accounts. So we are working with FinCEN, and we will be rolling out new regulations to be very clear on greater transparency so that law enforcement can see where the money is going and that this isn't used for money laundering. There is another component of the market which people refer to as stable coins, where we do think technology can be used to reduce payment processing quite considerably, particularly for small dollar payments cross-border. And then there's a third component that people are looking at, which is central bank digital issued currency. That is something that Chair Powell and I do not think the U.S. needs to consider now, but could consider again down the road.
Two issues here, mainly. We have actually, let's start with the Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin, basically stating new regulations are going to be rolled out. That's kind of creepy to all of us. Where do we think that stands? Where do we think that's heading? And also lumping together cryptocurrencies. Listen to both the question and the answer. At the end of the day, this, what do we do to safeguard society from this big danger that is cryptocurrencies, et cetera, et cetera? That narrative maintains itself very strongly within the American federal government.
Let's start with the good news. The first thing is that they cannot ignore it anymore. And I know for years it's been like under their radar, and it cannot be anymore. And it's too big to be ignored. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and it's also a good news, is they are not against it. They seem to be in favor of it, but in a certain framework, as long as they can some way control it, to understand what's going on. And I think what they want to prevent as much as they can, and it's not certain yet how they will do it, is to have a clear understanding that this is not leveraged for criminal purpose, which is a legitimate concern.
Is it a legitimate concern? Because, statistically one could argue that fiat is being used at the same percentage for illicit and illegal activities as cryptos, yet they keep getting
way more.
Way more,
Fiat,
exactly.
Fiat is way more, but the difference is that fiat has been around for 200 years and crypto crypto has been here for 10 years. So if the progress continues at scale with projects like Libra and others, which accelerate tremendously the adoption, then they want to be in control before it's too late. So their concern is legitimate. The problem by doing that is that they may stop the innovation of the industry or the adoption industry by imposing too many constraints and too many rules and too many controls.
Which to me sounds what they're about to do. I mean, that is the underlying lingo that I'm hearing there from the politics and from the politicians at that committee. And I'm asking, because you mentioned Libra. I mean, first of all, this is like a golden moment for Zuckerberg in a way, because what Jerome Powell is saying is as he said, we just realized right now that the world is moving ahead, right?
Without
Without the US.
Just what David Marcus was saying. If we don't do it, the Chinese will do it before us.
So do we think Libra's, first of all, do you think Libra is still going to happen? I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Really?
Think it will, I think it will 100% happen, but we don't know in which form. Everyone knows that they are actively, and it was confirmed right now on the screen, they're actively discussing with the government. So the question is, will the form in which it will happen be good enough for Libra to succeed as in its original vision? This we don't know yet, but the Facebook is determined and the Libra Association is determined to make it happen. So I think it will happen, but might be in a form that is not the one that was originally planned, at least not at first. And I think we will know that this year.
That we will know it this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I saw in what in his sayings before, I saw good news and bad news. The good news is that we're going to have new regulations, and then
Is it good news?
well, the good news is the new regulations because we have steps to follow, we have rules to follow. We can at least obey, or in many senses, to what the government wants.
At least
And
clear guidelines. One can
well,
argue.
if they're clear or not, we're not. It's there to see yet. And there's the bad news. It's that there are going to be new regulations, which means, by the subtext of the last words that you were saying, that they're probably going to be based on fear or concerns, and then those new regulations could be very narrowing. So, but I think the best would be is to review them when we see them.
When they come out.
I think there's a point to be made as well when we talk about, there's this oft-cited fact that, yes, cryptocurrencies are used in some crimes, but in fact it's less than fiat currencies. Fine, but I think that sort of whataboutism actually kind of deflects away from the true importance of cryptocurrencies and the role they can have in a widespread economy. They're intended to be a revolutionary technology by many in the sphere, not simply evolutionary. To say, well, we're as good, we're doing a little bit better than the previous system, but that system is also fundamentally flawed, that's not the bar we should be holding ourselves to as an industry. We want to hold ourselves to the highest bar, and if that means coming to terms with certain forms of regulation, if that means trying to develop new ways in the ecosystem, that's how revolutions occur. You don't do it by standing still or by just stepping one small step ahead. You need to make significant jumps.
How do you get everybody on board, though, to because I don't think the sphere, I think the sphere is divided exactly between those two frames of thought. Do we want to beat the system within the system, which will require regulations, even as strict as they might be, that we will have to follow, or where this new, completely
Different.
I don't want to call it anarchist, but completely different and entirely better. Forget the old way and let's move ahead.
I can't for the life of me believe the U.S. government will give up their monopoly on global finance in any capacity. It's going to take them a long time to jump into the CBDC game, but they're definitely going to get into it at some point. But to just say oh yeah, sure, so we're going to have zero effect on monetary policy across the world.
Never.
They could literally overnight write a bill, which they're considering at the moment, of corporations over a certain amount of money cannot issue their own currency, and that's it. It's dead in the water. They just be okay, if you sign up if you issue your own currency, you cannot operate in the United States. Facebook's gone.
Right.
And so you have to realize as much as we like to think that we're independent and maybe these crypto punks can actually put this together, it could be dead overnight.
Yeah, but the thing is to remember is that it's not a US game anymore. And I think this is what drives them to pay attention. They understand that if they don't do something that favors those initiatives, they're going to lose not the control over currency.
Do they understand
They're just
that?
going to lose the next war on economy.
Do you think they really understand
I
that?
think they do. I think they do because they see the dynamics in other markets. They see that China is dead committed to move to cryptocurrencies, and it's happening as we speak. They see that other territories like Japan and Korea are in phase of mass adoption, and so they just know that it's happening. They also know.
So when
But
they
it's not
say,
a
I'm sorry, but
cryptocurrency.
when Mnuchin sits there and says, as when it comes to a CBDC, we're totally not doing this, maybe later down the line,
It's the American thing. It's literally the American way to
to say we're in it.
to stay isolationist until the very end, and then kind of kick everyone's ass when we do it. It's just the way we've done everything. Think about it.
Actually,
Our entry into World War
II,
II, our race to the moon, the Soviets were beating us. But it's the way Americans do everything. We
And
wait.
it's worked for them
see
pretty
whatever-
well so far.
It's worked. Yeah.
Okay, that said, when they say CBDC, and you just mentioned that rightfully so, would they be, look, I mean, I tend to, and you and I we're having a discussion about this, I tend to think that, actually what's going on in China right now puts on hold many, many other things that are planned, even though, including maybe the CBDC, but they'll probably be the first.
Months, for several months.
But they'll probably be the first. They'll probably be the
most
first.
Probably. Probably they are already, but they're not telling about this. Just wait till WeChat gets their crypto coin and their coin over, and then Libra would be gone, would be on and approved in seconds.
You think?
I'm sure that if we have a WeChat kind of a coin beforehand, we'll have to.
I still can't believe we're talking about Libra. It's just
not necessarily Libra. It could be Jeff Bezos' new initiatives or whoever's or whatever.
I think Bezos is like the U.S. I think he's waiting for everybody to just fail and then he's going to walk in.
Come with his own, right?
Like Apple.
Yeah.
I have a feeling. I have a feeling he's gonna reinvent it, but not necessarily create his own currency. Everybody's trying to create their own new currency and compete with the U.S. dollar. I think he's gonna go hand in hand with them.
Hand in hand with the U.S. some.
Why fight the wave if you can ride with it, so to say?
Right. But we're theorizing on that. Why not Bitcoin though? Apropos.
Libra is pegged to coins or to currency, regular currency already. They're not fighting. They're trying to go with the current currencies already.
In what sense? It's a basket of currencies to create a new currency.
Yeah,
but it's
not the US dollar.
The Libra is a power play to take over the financial system.
Yep.
This is not. They could have said we're issuing a dollar stablecoin and we're going to implement it into our $2.5 billion person platform. Right. The idea of putting forward a currency based on the basket of other currencies is not to reach the unbanked. Yeah, it's exactly there.
Really? Just kidding.
It's there to take over the market, the same way that Facebook's trying to do with everything else. I can't imagine I can't imagine the United States after 70 years of global dominance will just roll over and say, hey guys, let all of you people control all the world's money in 50 different ways.
Ain't gonna happen.
Well, except one thing though. I mean, once you understand how Libra really works, it's true that it's a Facebook-initiated project, but it's not a Facebook-controlled project.
But it's not a US-controlled project.
Yeah, but it's not. It's very different from saying this is Facebook money or it's a Facebook.
Although the comments that came out from Microsoft
it's
CEO,
very different.
The comments that came out from Microsoft CEO Ajay Banga when he pulled out of the Libra project did imply that at least behind closed doors there were some sort of initiations for Facebook to run large elements of control over it using the Calibra wallet, using a whole lot of mechanisms as a sort of first mover advantage on the network they helped establish. Yes, maybe they don't technically control Libra, but they control Calibra and the wallet access, and they're the primary users of that. Maybe they don't get all 2.5 billion
They don't control
users.
two major things of that project: is the source code and the reserve policy, and this is managed by an association of which they are members. It's true that they will have an unfair advantage.
Okay.
They will have an unfair advantage with their wallet because it will be massively distributed immediately. But a wallet without a currency that works means nothing. They tried in the past. They tried to integrate the dollar in Messenger and it never worked. And we're talking about the dollar. So it means that the distribution alone is not enough. And I think the fear around this project, we're talking about the fear as the demise of the project, right? The fear around this project is just the sad legacy that there is around Facebook. But as such, the project is very noble and sadly, in my opinion, very poorly understood.
Very poorly understood, but can they even, you raised something interesting. Indeed, it's the sad legacy of Facebook, but when it comes to finances, trust, is a key thing.
Is it a sad legacy, a sad way that people look at Facebook?
I
can leave my phone on the side of the desk and talk about something that I've never talked about before, and I'll get an ad, for example, like a new washing machine, and I don't need one. And all of a sudden, when my phone is not on the Facebook app, the screen is closed and it's on the side, it will send me instead of targeted ads. Hey, here's a new washing machine. Check out these companies. As the sponsored things, they're not disclosing this information and how they're using their data and how they're targeting you, and it's continuing to build mistrust with Facebook. Sure. For them to control my money,
that's happening regardless
of
Libra.
That's exactly what I said, though. That's
It's still going.
It's still going. The political ads are still going.
Whatnot?
I mean,
the fear is justified.
Yeah, they're doing nothing to actually build trust. They're just trying to shove it under the rug.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I can equate that with some other world leaders, but let's move ahead. Now, the BACT application is reportedly set to go live in the first half of 2020. According to Jeffrey Spurcher, the CEO of ICE, which is BACT's parent company, after first setting out to build a regulated Bitcoin custody solution as well as a regulated futures and options platform, BACT is now turning its focus to the next phase, namely consumer-focused digital payments. Is this it? Do we think that they've just, jumped on the next killer app? Are we heading there?
It's not just that.
And then we'll go to consensus.
BACT has been, it's a daughter company of ICE, which is in the business of stock markets and trade marketplaces. This is what they do. And they see an opportunity with this new form of digital assets, and they believe that they can build the next generation of marketplaces of digital assets with possibly a consumer app.
Right.
And they consider that any asset will be digital and should be in the form of a nice wallet. It reminds me, by the way, a design of a certain app that I know very well. I feel very complimented here. But thank you, BACT. By the way, you may not know that they were in Israel 2 weeks ago. The senior management of BACT was here visiting.
Really?
Yes, yes, I had the opportunity to meet with them. Yes, I was there. And,
who was the senior management of BACT nowadays?
Adam White, the president, was here, and the senior team, the engineering team was here. And so that committed to the consumer angle, which is very interesting because the majority of the market right now is institution.
Right.
So it's great to see a big player coming into that space. I think it comes from the will from their founder, the CEO of ICE that you just mentioned, really that he seems very excited about this opportunity, him personally, and really want to make something happen. So they've acquired recently a reward program that they will bake in BACT. Pun intended. And there was even rumors that they were going to acquire eBay, but that dropped.
And that dropped.
Yeah.
Okay. You think it's the killer app?
I think it's too soon to know. It's too soon right now. I can't say, really.
I think as well we'll all need to be a bit wary just in general terms when it comes to BACT-based announcements in this space after what we saw in 2019. Not saying anything of the specific project, but let's not start calling things killer apps or overhyping certain things because we've seen where that leads in the past.
Well,
and
well, when it came to BACT, I mean, I think we went over this a while ago
right.
also, and I was like, there's steady growth, and then it was, it's steady growth, but then it turned to zero a month later. So it's not what I think that you're kind of touching upon, and also Oriel, what you were touching upon, this marketplace of things, and let's not call it a killer app because I don't think it's going to be something that people realize is a killer app. But if you can go and take your Chili's restaurant credits and then swap them for Apple Store credits, that might be something that actually really gets into a marketplace. But people don't understand they're dealing with cryptocurrencies. They're just swapping their Chili's points for iTunes points or Google Pay points or Apple points or whatever. I think that's going to be less so of the consumer-facing marketplace. They won't realize it's a marketplace. It won't be like Binance, but it'll be something that people inherently use easily.
Yeah, and one thing that's certain is no one is going to download 30, 40 wallets every time there is a new whatever coin.
Yeah. Just
and
Zengo.
So people want a remote control for their digital life as they have a remote control for a TV. And so I think the vision makes sense. The question is, when your company coming from, baby born from parent that is institutional oriented, can you become a consumer grade company? And that's a very, very big switch. And Apple cannot become Microsoft, and Microsoft could not become Apple. So we'll see what they're able to be building with that.
But yet, you know what? It's big names, big mainstream names. One can argue in the sphere that might change it, which leads me to the next one. And yes, I think time will tell about BACT. That said, I think one can argue that they're quite solid in this space at this point in time. But JP Morgan Chase, apropos, and what a far cry this is from 2 years ago, they're in talks to merge its marquee blockchain unit Quorum with Ethereum, Brooklyn-based startup of Joe Lubin fame, Consensus, of course. The deal is likely to be formally announced within the next 6 months. Financial terms are still unclear. The news received quite, mixed reactions, one can argue, from the sphere. This is what, Luke Kerner, co-founder of Crypto Oracle, and Ethan Pierce of Crypto Assets has told us about it, and then I'll check with you. Let's have a listen.
I think it's pretty cool. It continues the trend that we're going to see. I think the decentralized fan club is never going to like most of these ideas, but the reality is for a lot of this stuff to scale to first scale in terms of financial services, we're going to see a lot of partnerships between the historical financial industry and projects in the blockchain and crypto space.
JP Morgan has been talking about spinning out Quorum since May of 2019. So while it's functional, it's out there, it's being used by more than 350 banks. I still don't think that it's had the impact that JP Morgan thought that it would have. And at the same time, you have Consensus, which is just announced the paring back of staff. So they're trying to obviously to conserve their cash a little bit. And so it's actually a marriage that makes a lot of sense. Quorum has been running on the Ethereum blockchain since 2016. JP Morgan Quorum was part of the original Enterprise Ethereum Alliance in February of 2017.
Okay, JP Morgan, Consensus. I just want to say that this comes on the heels, of course, of Consensus cutting approximately 14% of the work staff a week before this announcement. And I'm just putting it out there. Nothing confirmed. Of course, they've said that anything that we know is what was reported on Reuters. What do we make of this?
This is when
This marriage.
This is when, well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because this is when you leave your girlfriend for something better, and then I guess the girlfriend gets desperate, Consensus not having money, and then you get back together. Like, they spun Quorum off.
Right.
And then now they're merging back into Ethereum.
Wasn't Quora already a fork of Ethereum?
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was based on an
that's what I
airline.
said.
Basically, it's the girlfriend going back home, right?
Yeah,
this
the
is
girlfriend
exactly
realizing
it. Yeah.
it's not much better out there. But still, when we're
Daddy
looking...
and mommy is here. Much better.
Well, the boyfriend got a job at a big name bank, so now he's more. Now he's more attractive.
I mean, I'm thinking of Jamie Dimon only 2 years ago, really going anything to do with cryptos, blah, 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 blah. He knew.
He definitely
He
knew.
knew.
There's no way in the world they spun off their own blockchain off of Ethereum to create their own JPM coin, and 6 months later they have this entire division that's doing something. The CEO of one of America's biggest banks, he didn't know.
By the way,
Gauta.
this is just a rumor. So we don't know yet, so let's not let's skip.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
We don't know.
We're
We'll know what we know.
theorizing.
The
We're
partners have been
theorizing. What does
texting,
it do to the sphere? Let me ask you this. This big name bank, JP Morgan Chase, that's like the biggest, one of the, it is, I think, biggest asset holder in the United States. And say it, honey.
Maybe Ethereum can finally update its network with their money.
Okay.
Well, the market seems to agree with you based on its performance in the last
Yeah, do you
week
think
or
so?
so.
I was wondering the same thing with our editor-in-chief this morning, because Ethereum's been doing phenomenally over the course of the last several. Well, yeah. Do we think also that has to do something with that, or just the rise of the market?
Probably not. I mean, what this proves, though, is that even when you are a giant name like JP Morgan, and building your own whatever crypto stuff is not an easy thing to pull out, and it's better, as you said, to join the wave rather than trying to pull off something. And it just doesn't work. I mean, innovation has been like that forever. Usually, innovation comes from native players and not from entrenched legacy players, and this is, if that confirms, this is a confirmation of that.
That's a confirmation.
On that note, when previously before I was doing now, I was working in InsurTech for a bit, and legacy insurance companies forget they can just throw $1 billion at this idea and create this digital insurance. These established legacy players, as you've said, it comes from the startups and stuff. They have zero idea how to foster innovation. They have to acquire it. And so, when
corporate America.
it really is. When it came to just retaining, they have no idea how to hire developer help or engineers. And when it comes to retaining those engineers and keeping them happy and not leaving for another job, I think 60% of them leave, or there's some crazy figure, I have to find it, but they have no idea how to do so. This might be just a simple acquisition for JP Morgan to essentially merge with Consensus or buy Consensus and essentially buy that innovation. This is an acquisition, if you
that's what it feels like to me, but I think time will tell, or we'll know in the next 6 months exactly what that means. That said, ladies and gentlemen, one of the Sphere members was talking about Andrew Yang dropping out of the Democratic race this week in the United States. With the headline was a tweet that I saw, "Good night, sweet prince," because he was the prince of the Sphere. He, famously attended Consensus in New York last year, which is the big convention, and not only that, was never shy of talking about his affinity or his, to the cryptocurrency world. Now, every American, he also advocated nationwide crypto regulations rather than state-by-state policies. But before we talk about him, what this means, let's take a look at some background on Yang, the one man who ran in the political circus that is the Democratic race right now. Let's have a look.
You know, I am the math guy, and it is clear tonight from the numbers that we are not going to win this race.
Democratic presidential hopeful Andrew Yang has withdrawn from the election following the New Hampshire primary on Tuesday. Known as the crypto candidate to those in the space, Yang believed that the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies is very, very high potential and we should be investing in it. He further stated that right now we're stuck with this hodgepodge of state-by-state treatments and it's bad for everybody. It's bad for innovators who want to invest in the space, which is why he proposed policy positions around crypto and broader technology spaces. His campaign gained huge support on social media, with many crypto proponents joining his #YangGang. This support, however, was not enough at the Iowa caucus, where he received only 1% of the vote, or in New Hampshire, where he got 2.9% of the vote, according to the New York Times.
I have been persuaded that the message of this campaign will not be strengthened by my staying in this race any longer. Endings are hard, New Hampshire, but this is not an ending. This is a beginning.
Yang started laying off campaign staff following the Iowa caucus before formally ending his bid on Tuesday night.
We've lost our man. But okay, first of all, I want you to raise your glasses because what we're going to do, Yang is out, but in good prediction mode, we're going to try and predict who's going to win the Democratic race.
Well, there are many options left, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna actually, I'm gonna start with.
This point is not a prediction.
There's a lot of predictions left. Sorry, there's a lot of names left on it. One can argue it's as chaotic and very hard to predict as the cryptosphere. Asher, who do you think will take the Democratic candidacy at the end of this race?
You know what? I'm just gonna throw an out there one. I think the dark horse of the race, Klobuchar. I reckon she takes it.
Really?
I reckon she sneaks on through. Everyone's fighting on the top, and she sneaks on through.
Interesting. Yes, my dear Manuel. Yeah.
I want to say Sanders, but I think he doesn't have the energy.
I think he does. I think the Democratic Party doesn't want to.
So, you know, I have no idea. Maybe Bloomberg. I have no idea. Ooh.
Okay.
We'll see.
Possibility. What do you think? Prediction?
Just very much too soon to know. It's not a prediction. I'll just be supportive of Asher's name that he mentioned.
Klobuchar?
Klobuchar, yeah. Just being supportive of that.
I wonder.
Right?
Okay, I'm going to name this as well. Who do you think, Alex?
Well, as a libertarian, this is fun to watch.
But you guys are doing splendidly. Just kidding. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a personal thing. It's not a party affiliation.
I know, clearly.
I don't necessarily think there will be a winner of the DNC to run. It might come down to a brokered deal between the candidates and the DNC of who actually gets to run this year.
Okay.
I think
that's going to be interesting.
Because I can't get it. It's going to be a 15-minute thing. But Bernie's too old and crazy. Warren's an astronomical liar. I don't think Klobuchar has the pull to do it. I would love to see Buttigieg. I would love to see him as president. He's a young gay Kennedy. He's educated. He's a veteran. I don't know. I would love to see him take it. But I don't think it's going to go that way that we all think, where just one person's going to get the votes and they're going to take the role.
If one person does get the vote, I got my money on Buttigieg.
But I don't think that Yang is a math guy. I don't know.
I was waiting to say he wanted to
I was waiting for this because I did the math beforehand.
Right.
And giving everyone a universal basic income in the United States, there's 330 million people in the United States. $1,000 a month is $12,000 a year. Just simple math, and I'm not going to go through the rest of the calculations because I can't cite those numbers. But the end of my calculator thing when I was checking it was that it comes out to $4 trillion a year, which would double the U.S. national budget, and it's more than the United States spends on defense, as the largest spender on defense in the world, Social Security, Medicare, education, essentially infrastructure. It's more than the United States spends on everything combined.
Yeah.
Right.
How is he going to do that if he's a math guy?
But Alex, I will say, and in the least condescending way possible, but like the Overton window, a very important concept now in the US, the sort of pulling of where the center is in politics, left and right, is being pulled very aggressively in the US at the moment from both sides. And maybe he was just trying to pull the conversation a little bit more to his end of the spectrum. Maybe that is not in and of itself a fully realized policy.
But it's bullshit. It's like, hey, like I'm gonna pull it my way by lying to you.
Honey, it's worked for the president of the United
Everyone's
States now.
lying.
For everyone.
What are you talking about?
It's worked for the Democrats too. Like here's the
It's
libertarian in me.
but I'm saying it's
for
worked
both
for
sides.
everyone.
But at least when it's math, you can call it out.
Yeah.
They're all lying, yeah.
Exactly.
Whatever.
They all lie.
But
Life
he made it
debate.
easier.
Just don't call it math.
He made it easier to call out. Warren made it easier to call out. She kept going like, it's like, oh, we're not going to raise taxes. Like, we're not going to raise taxes on the middle class. And everyone's like, how are you going to do that? And she just shuts up and diverts to something else.
But you are having this conversation. We're having this conversation now. You bothered to do the math and bothered to think about it, which means that the window has been pulled slightly, and it's in the conversation. Suddenly, universal basic income, an idea that was considered a lunatic fringe idea.
I still
is
think
now
it's a lunatic fringe idea.
It's in the conversation,
I can just
but
call
it's
it
in the
bullshit
conversation.
openly now.
Well, that's how
Okay.
things enter the conversation.
But notice,
He's done the
notice
math. He's done the math. So.
Okay.
I've become the
I'm
math
sorry.
guy.
I got another prediction for you guys. With all due respect, what about McAfee?
What about it?
Yeah.
He's a Libra. How are we still talking about this
Okay.
guy?
Okay. Because you never know, dude. You know, it's 2020. He might end up as president of the United
He
States.
also might end up a eunuch by the end of the year.
Yeah, but I think it's a close call between him and Kanye West for 2024. Now,
Kanye Trump as VP, Kanye steps down.
yeah, guys, salute. Raise your glasses. You have been
right.
fabulous. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
It has been
Cheers.
another week. Blockchain and Booze with Block TV. Au revoir.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.